August the 20th, 2023. Guys, you're looking at current sea surface temperatures. Now, when you're seeing from in the red areas and then it goes to white, that's your hottest areas. And that's actually showing a little bit hotter than what we're seeing on the scale of 32 degrees Celsius. Now, 32 degrees Celsius is, you might as well say 90 degrees. And this looks a little higher than that because we're getting into the white hot area. Anyway, we just had a system come in overnight through the Florida Straits. And when you see the satellite images I'm about to show you, you'll see how rapidly this thing is developing now that it's in this much warm water. Also, again, Sea of Cortez here, the warm water from the equator and the El Nino water is trapped here. It's very hot also, and you've got Hillary with bands setting over that warm section. It's going to pull a lot of moisture your way, and it's a natural bay. You got a lot of whales, and you got the squids and the Humboldt squids and different creatures that live there, because the peninsula itself of the Baja keeps this colder Pacific water out. But again, when you're getting into 32, you're like 98.6 or something like that, very close to 90 degrees as far as water temperatures, and some of these are a little hotter than what we're seeing here. Now, let's take a look at some of our satellite images. Now, guys, as I'm recording this, it is 2:38 p.m. Central Time. And these are current images. The last frame you see is the newest one out. You got on the left Hillary coming up the Baja Peninsula now, guys. It's not far from Southern California, moving very quickly. Notice how the moisture wraps all the way around the high pressure zone now that's along the U.S. and Canadian border, all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. That's why it is 102 the temperature with 112 real feel right now. That's not the heat index, but it's warm, and that's what's happening. But here in the Gulf of Mexico, I want you to watch what happened overnight as it came through the Florida Straits. Very weak. There was some rotation in there, but when it got into these open, warmer waters, watch what happened today. Check this out. You're scanning into daylight this morning. Now, I'll set this back to the normal speed that it comes in. At the left, you can see how quickly that the remnants of what was a Cat 4 is now crossed into California. Check that out, guys. Watch right here on the very coastline. That means that half of this storm is still over the ocean. That's cooler water there, much cooler than it is in the Sea of Cortez. We were just looking at that. So you got one leg in this very warm water. You're starting to see moisture a little further to the east, and that's a good thing, because I know my family in Phoenix, kids and grandkids, would enjoy something cooler than what they've been dealing with. They've broken records for, I think, most consecutive days over 100 degrees. Again, high pressure over the U.S. That's why we are so hot. I'd love to get a tropical storm or tropical depression pulled through here. I've noticed in your comments, guys, how many people's gardens and lawns and trees and bushes have died off from this heat. Even someone said that 2 days up in the northwest where we saw the record heat, that affected a lot of vegetation just those 2 days. And if you look closely in the top left in the bright pink, you can see where the fires are, the forest fires. Check that out. And some of this lighter pink coming through the U.S. is that smoke. Very large fire here on the Canadian border with Washington State. Again, right here, guys, back to the Gulf of Mexico. Notice, again, we're looking through the nighttime here. Comes through. We're seeing this pattern, but as soon as it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, this thing starts to enlarge. That's going to be a problem. Again, you can see both storms from here. There's other activity out in the Atlantic. Let's take a look at that while we're here. But this was to focus on, again, California. Remember, San Diego, LA, you guys be prepared for flooding. And now we're going to have to deal with this. It looks like possibly Texas, South Texas hit, but we will look at the newest models, which I haven't seen. They should be coming out now. Again, look at that. Getting into that some of the hottest water on the planet, and that's what we've been talking about from day one. It's got very late in the season, all the oceans are overheated, and this is what we're going to see. Now look at the wide Atlantic. You see the sun rise, and you're going to see it start to set over the African continent. One thing I forgot to mention about the Gulf of Mexico, you're still getting extra moisture. Look in the Bay of Campeche in the very bottom, and that's coming from Hurricane Hillary. Now these are storms that are out in the Atlantic. The one that's really strengthening also is right here coming into the warmer waters of the Caribbean. We'll close in on that and take a look at how fast it's starting to rotate. It's still predicted to move north, possibly across Haiti in this area, and get into this section of the Atlantic Ocean. You can also see the one that's coming into the Gulf of Mexico here, right there. These two are going to be the main concern for us right now. Now I want to switch it back to NT microphysics, guys, because we can see through the night here. This is going to be a very large storm that has just come off the African coast. One thing I've noticed in the bright pink, that's the Saharan sand layer. You can see it across the Atlantic. And some of the feeder bands from the top of the center storm is coming back in there, and that's going to take away some of that sand, the moisture in this system. That's what we've been talking about. But if this one gets really riled up right here, we'll have to pay attention. But it does have that northerly drift, so it may be another Atlantic event. Let's take a look at the Caribbean while we're here. Now this is zooming in. It's a pretty incredible image coming from space. But as it gets into the warmer waters of the Caribbean, notice it starts to do the same thing the system in the Gulf is doing. Check that explosion of thunderstorms. If this thing wraps up, guys, it's going to be something to contend with, and they're predicting that it will be. But again, they are expecting it to continue west and then maybe cross here somewhere around Haiti, Dominican Republic. This is the 7-day outlook from Miami, Florida at the National Hurricane Center. Here in the Gulf, it's 60% chance of development, and I agree with that. It says the showers and thunderstorms have increased this afternoon in association with an area of disturbed weather located in the eastern Gulf. Additional development of the system is possible as it moves westward at about 15 to 20 miles per hour, and a tropical depression could form as it approaches the western Gulf of Mexico. Now, if it stays as a tropical depression, it would be less damaging than a tropical storm. We're just going to have to keep an eye on it, but tropical depression, guys, could bring some much needed rain. And they're showing the center of this right in southern Texas right there, but the center could move anywhere inside this orange area before this is said and done. If it's large enough, and it seems to be growing along the coast, guys, in Louisiana, parts of eastern Texas, maybe here in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, we may get some offsprings of showers. Definitely watch for, guys, water spouts and tornadoes, even with a tropical storm coming ashore. Behind that, now the one coming into the Caribbean, guys, 90% chance of cyclone formation. Some of the models show it growing very strong, but it says the showers and the thunderstorms continue to show the signs of organization and association with an area of low pressure over the eastern Caribbean Sea. In addition, visible satellite imagery shows evidence that a well-defined center is developing, and earlier satellite wind data indicated the system was producing winds of 35 to 40 miles per hour. Again, we have Emily already formed behind it, so that we would have to look. It would be F. Someone looked at the named or the hurricane names for this year. But it says the NOAA Hurricane Reconnaissance Mission is currently en route to investigate the system this afternoon. It's forecast to move westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour over the eastern and central Caribbean before turning northward and potentially affecting the Dominican Republic and Haiti on Tuesday and Wednesday. So you guys pay attention to it. Regardless of development, heavy rainfall is possible over portions of the Lesser Antilles during the next couple of days. Interest in the eastern and central Caribbean should monitor the progress of this storm. And just quickly changing maps, now that it's a tropical storm, they're going to give us a little more information. 11 a.m. today here, that's Atlantic Standard Time, I think. 8 a.m. Tomorrow morning, still a tropical storm. Then it gets closer to the high pressure and cooler waters, but it's showing the path right here through 8 a.m. Friday. That should still stay well offshore unless it gets trapped under a re-emerging high pressure that could shift the direction of it. Guys, and coming into 6, tropical depression as of 11 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Now, right in the middle, you got tropical depression number 6. Its winds are at 35 miles per hour. It's moving west at 10 knots or 12 miles per hour. We'll look at a couple of models. This may be the one that gets dissolved in it if the models hadn't changed. In other words, trapped in between a couple of storms when this one moves north and this one moves north. A lot of times they will absorb another storm that's weaker and close to it. Now, this is the Canadian model, guys. We'll let it cycle through, but it's showing the storm that's in the Caribbean now. Watch it there. That's the one that's going to become very powerful. There it crosses the Bahamas, moving up along the east coast, and that orange area of high pressure will determine how close it comes to the east coast itself. You can see up into Canada there, and the islands there in Canada, that they're going to take an impact. Now, the system going into the Gulf of Mexico, they're not putting much emphasis on it. That's why I know the model has not been updated, but maybe at noon it was, because it showed the storm in the Caribbean now crossing the islands, but now it looks like it's going to shoot the gap between Cuba and Haiti, and that will let it maintain its strength. Got this one following. It's not emphasizing the system that is strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico. It's showing some movement along the Texas border, but again, the models are not up to date with the satellite images. But one thing I want to point out, as the storm in the Caribbean comes here, we've watched it, and for the last 2 days in the models, split about this area. And then yesterday, the second section of it followed it north. But here it shows it lingering into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's something we need to watch there. The U.S. Navy model does not go out quite as far in time. But something I noticed with this model and the GFS model is once the storm comes across the islands here, the high pressure turns it back east. Watch that. Watch it right here. Now movement to the east, strengthening with the purple getting in the center. You're getting very low there. And again, it stops. But notice when it stops here, high pressure is going to be setting back over this section of the Atlantic. The Canadian model shows it pushing through that. It's going to change day to day. This is going out to the 28th, so that's a week away. And we know things will change. But it does showing earlier than that becoming a very strong storm. But guys, we're watching this. You watch it. We get an 8 o'clock update. If there's something that's important there, I'll come in with a video. And you guys out in California, you got to watch it now. You know, you've been getting moisture probably all day. I've looked at some of the beach cams there. Been overcast. At the time that I was looking at, it looked like low tide. Again, I mentioned that. So whether you're in San Diego or LA, you're going to have different tide charts, different timing on that. So if you've got interest along the water, make sure you're aware of not only the higher winds that will be involved, but anytime something like this comes ashore at high tide, there's much more flooding. Just keep that in mind. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.